military action in Iraq. I was a high school senior. Today, I'm the father of 3. I'm a member of Congress in my 3rd term. We are still at war in Iraq 26 years later with no end in sight. It is the very definition of insanity posed by Albert Einstein to do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. So whether it is the wars that we're fighting seemingly endlessly around the world, whether it's honoring our commitment to our veterans, whether it's leading on immigration reform, whether it's making sure that healthcare is a right and not a function of luck or privilege or circumstance, whether it's ensuring that everyone who is looking for work can find that job that pays more than a living wage and returns function and dignity and purpose to their lives, we can absolutely get this done. And as David said, we can do it by winning this election. And this election is not just urgent, it's not just necessary, it's not just the most important election in the history of this state, of this country, I'd argue, since the Civil War, because it will literally determine the direction, the fortune, and the fate of this country. This is totally winnable. When they pulled this race, when I first entered in April, Ted Cruz, by the way, that's the guy we're running against, but we don't need to bring up his name too much. Ted Cruz, 30%, Beto O'Rourke, 30%. So we started dead even with 40% of Texas undecided. And as I've told you earlier, we've done everything we can to visit every single one of those 40% who had not yet made their minds or didn't know who we were, and we've got 11 months more to meet the rest of them. We outraised Ted Cruz in the 8 months, 9 months that we've been in this race. So this guy, Ted Cruz, takes political action committee money from corporations filtered through these PACs, money from special interests, money from the big ticket donors, the dark money that you can't track because it comes in through special organizations whose donors are shielded from scrutiny and transparency. This guy who ran for president and almost won the Republican Party nomination has a national fundraising base from which to draw. You and I and our neighbors and our friends and our family members all across Texas, with an average contribution of $25 online, outraised the sitting junior U.S. Senator. That shows you that there is some potential and some opportunity and some momentum in this race. And then there's this thing that happened a few weeks ago that we like to call Alabama. And Alabama shows us something really important. You had a candidate who ran not away from issues, who didn't deny that he was a progressive, who proudly talked about the things that he believed in, who had the courage of his convictions, who listened to and worked with everyone within Alabama that he wanted to represent and that he wanted to serve. And the people of Alabama responded to that. And I would argue maybe they, in fact, were the ones who led in this campaign and decided this election more than the candidate himself. And not only did they reject somebody terrible in Roy Moore, and not only did they elect somebody who I think is going to be a positive addition to the Senate in Doug Jones, they helped us as a country answer a very important question at a very critical time about who we are and who we will be and what is important to us. And listen to this. David gave you a preview of this earlier, but Donald Trump wins Alabama in 2016 by 28 points. Donald Trump wins Texas by 9 points. Roy Moore, on the eve of that election, Roy Moore, who you know the things that Roy Moore has been accused of and likely did to young girls in that state, and everybody in Alabama knew that, viewed favorably by his fellow Alabamians, 41%. Ted Cruz views favorably by his fellow Texans, 38%. Ted Cruz is liked less in Texas than Roy Moore is liked in Alabama. We can totally win this race. It's going to require your commitment. Signing up, you can do it by texting Beto, B-E-T-O, to 90975. You can go to the website, betofortexas.com. You can make a contribution of $25. Don't let the average stop you. You can go to 50, 75, 100, whatever you want to do. You can go as low as 5. The important thing is that you become part of this. You can sign up for a newsletter that I email out infrequently. Always when it's signed by me, it means I wrote it. These are my words, my thoughts, coming from the end of my fingers as I tell you about the travels that we've had across the state, the things that I've learned, those things that I want to share with the people who are part of this campaign. most importantly, you've got to believe, you've got to share this, you've got to tell your friends, your family members, your neighbors, your coworkers, your classmates that this is possible, and that working together, we are going to make this real. The last thing I ask before I turn this over to you and listen to you and take your questions, get your suggestions and your ideas, is if you have a minute after this is done, please take a picture with me, or take a picture with a neighbor or somebody who's here, or take a picture of the crowd that came out tonight, and send that out on Twitter, or on Facebook, or on Instagram, or on Snapchat. If you don't do one of those 4 things, you literally were not here. And this did not happen, and we do not exist. That's the way the rules work in 2017 going into 2018. So listen, most of all, thank you for taking the time to be here tonight. Really looking forward to hearing what's on your mind, answering your questions, getting your suggestions and your ideas. David and team, thank you for organizing this. Really appreciate it. Thank you all.